Okay, so you'll notice I'm not in the video right now because we're doing things a little differently today. We're going to look at how to actually complete some constructions. And so again, remember I suggested that you made sure that you had a compass for a Wednesday's lesson. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to use one of these compasses, but I'm also going to post links to videos if you have an kind of an old school compass. So one of those that has the two branches. So keep in mind, the reason I'm showing you with this kind of compass is because this is the closest as we're going to get to the actual tool that's available online. And this is something I'm going to show you where you can practice this online. But most of your questions that you're going to have for these, again, you're not going to be required to complete a construction until you actually get to the SOL if you're taking it. If you're doing this through a Schoology assessment, then you're going to be just looking at recognizing the marks and doing things that way. So our first construction that we want to do is a congruent segment. So I'm going to actually draw a segment. So I need an endpoint, a straight line, and another endpoint. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this segment. So to do this, the first thing I need to do, and I'm going to switch to a different pen. So first thing I'm going to do is I need a place to actually copy it to. So I'm going to start a new line segment. Again, just starting a random point. And my apologies, I know this isn't in perfect focus. This is as close as I can get with the document camera that I have. So I'm going to draw a ray. It goes through that point and off in the distance. And if we're going to copy a line segment, we are copying a portion of a line. So I need to use my compass to actually measure how far is it between the 2 points of my original segment. Now, I'm not going to do this with the ruler that's on here because one, you can't see that very well, and two, I don't trust the production of these rulers unless I'm buying them from like a scientific company or somebody that I know that can actually manufacture precise equipment. Doing this by compass is actually a more accurate version. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to take this point here and I'm going to center it as close as I can to get to the center of this. Now, depending on the compass that you have, you might have a little hole there. I have a very, it's hard to see, like you can't see it on the camera, but I have crosshairs on there. And I'm going to line up as close as I can to get those crosshairs kind of centered over that point. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my slider so I can get one of these holes right over this spot. So again, I want to hold on to this spot very carefully. I can actually twist it around as I need to. And then I'm going to slide this over so I can see the point right in the hole. So just to make sure that I've got it in the right spot, I'm actually going to draw a little arc through there. And you'll see this on most of your multiple choice problems as well. They'll show you that actual arc. Now, I'm not going to move that slider. So I went right through the endpoint. I'm going to do exactly the same thing on my new segment. So line up my crosshairs right over the endpoint that I drew. Keep it steady. And then draw another arc. And basically what I'm doing is I'm using my compass to measure off this distance. So I set my distance here. And I just copied it over here. And now I actually have two segments, this guy and this guy, that are congruent to each other. So I could use whatever ruler I have available to double check that. And so if I check my measures, I'm looking at approximately 4.7 centimeters and 4.7 centimeters. I got it pretty darn close. Okay, I'm going to do another one just to show. So again, these go pretty quick. I'm going to draw another random straight segment, again, wanting to make sure that I do a nice straight line. So I'm using a straight edge. And again, I need a new place to copy this. So I'm going to make a point, draw a ray or a line. Again, making sure I'm getting it a little bit longer than I think I need it to be. Center my compass over my endpoint as close as I can get it. Adjust the hole on my slider so I can see my point inside. Draw a quick arc just to make sure I hit it. Yep. Line it back up. And there's my new congruent point. Alrighty, our next construction that we need to do is doing a congruent angle. So again, I need to start with an angle. So an angle, don't forget, starts from a common endpoint, and it's going to have two rays as its side. So there's one side, and I'm going to do an acute angle to start. And there's my other side. Okay, notice I'm not relying on being able to draw a straight line. I don't trust myself. I'm going to use the straight edge. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to create another angle that is congruent to this one. So I need a place to start. So I'm going to start right here. Every angle is made up of two arcs that share an endpoint, or two rays that share an endpoint. Again, I'm going to go a little longer than I think I need. Okay. So then, center at the vertex, and I'm going to, on this one, actually draw an arc. Now I want to make sure it hits both sides of that angle. And again, between this and the next step, do not move your slider. Do not change the width of your compass. So I'm going to pick it up, recenter on my new ray where my new angle is going to go. And I'm going to draw exactly the same size arc. And I tend to make it a little bigger than I think I'm going to need, because again, I want to make sure I don't run out of room. So next step, we need to use the compass to measure how much space we have here between these two intersection points, and we're going to copy it over to our new arc that we just drew. So the easiest way to do this is actually set your compass, or if you're using an old school compass, you're going to want to use the pointy end. Put the center right over the intersection point you have at the bottom. And then you're going to try to find this intersection point in the hole. And again, if you have a little problems finding it, try tracing over that point so you can see it a little easier. So I want to move my compass so I can see the point. Just like before, I'm going to go ahead and draw an arc just to make sure that I hit that point exactly. Awesome. So then I'm going to transfer this. Notice I haven't touched my compass width at all. I haven't moved the slider. Center it over the bottom point. Draw an arc so it intersects the top piece. And then to draw my new angle, all I need to do is draw my new ray going through here. So line up your straight edge and draw your new side. So best way to measure this is if you have a protractor, you can measure your angles. I do have a little teeny tiny protractor on the end, but I know it's not super exact. But I can use it to kind of estimate things. So it looks like I'm hitting at about the 60-degree mark. So to test the one on the bottom, and again, I'm going about through the 60-degree mark. Okay, keep in mind you're human. You are not perfect. You are not a computer. So your construction might be just a hair off, but the more you practice these, the more exact you can get them. Okay, I'm going to try one more. This time I'm going to try it with an obtuse angle. So I'm going to draw an obtuse angle up here. And again, I'm kind of running out of room, so I'm going to make this with kind of short sides. But I'm still going to be able to copy this even though it's an obtuse type of angle. So again, just like before, I need a place to copy my angle, so I'm going to put him down here. I'm going to draw a new ray. Make sure to hold your ruler steady. Okay. Second step was drawing the arc. So I need to draw an arc that goes between both sides. So center your compass over your angle point. And we want to draw an arc that intersects both sides. I want to make sure that I get one that's actually on those lines. And this side's kind of short, so that's where I'm going to make sure it lines up. Draw an arc that hits both sides. And without changing the width, transfer that measure over. Draw your arc. And again, err on the side of caution. If you're not thinking you drew it long enough, draw a bigger arc or draw a longer arc. Okay, now I need to measure this distance between my intersection points. I would always suggest using the bottom point that you're going to want to line up on your ray. Never a bad idea to draw the point in so you can see it. Line it up. Look for that point in one of the holes in your compass. There we go. And again, might not be a bad idea, draw your arc just to make sure you hit it exactly. I got it pretty darn close. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer center, goes over here, match it up. Draw your arc so it intersects the big arc that you drew. X marks the spot. You're going to connect it with your endpoint to draw your new angle. Again, these can be a little bit tricky. You'll notice I had to actually switch hands in the middle, and I know most people can't do that. Most people are either left-handed or right-handed. I tend to be right-handed, but again, practice these out. You'll notice I'm not using anything special. I am using a compass, a pen, or you might want to use a pencil, and a blank piece of paper. So I'm not using any fancy handout or anything on here. Okay, our last construction to do for the day. We're going to do something called bisecting an angle. Now, we haven't talked about something called a bisector yet, but we have talked about midpoint. A midpoint is a middle point between a segment. So how would we cut an angle in half? Well, we can't say the midpoint of an angle because there's no really middle place. We have, if I look back up my angles that I made, I've got all these possible places I could have a point. So if I'm going to cut an angle in half, I'm going to have to split it right down the middle. And that's what we call a bisector. So an angle bisector is something that cuts an angle in half. So just like before, I'm going to start out by drawing an angle, and then I'm going to bisect it. I'm going to cut in half. Now we have a little bit more room that we can use on these. So I'm going to put this angle right smack in the middle. And again, I need two sides. So here's one side, straight ray. Here's another side, straight ray. Oops. Okay. So we are going to cut this angle in half. This is an acute angle. Okay. Here we go. So our first step, center your compass at your end point, and you are going to draw an arc that hits both sides of the angle, just like we did when we were doing congruent angles. So both sides of the angle. So again, notice I'm not trying to get it through the arrows. I'm actually keeping it pretty far back from the arrows, but you do want to give yourself a little bit of room. So you'll notice I'm not doing this with a teeny tiny angle. Okay, now at this point, it's your choice. You can move your compass, but I tend to leave it right where it is if I can, especially on acute angles. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move the center of my compass up to the intersection point at the top. And I'm going to draw an angle that's in the interior. In other words, it's kind of inside the sides of my angle. I do not want to touch my compass width from this point on. So wherever I drew that arc, I have to keep my compass exactly the same way. And I'm going to put my center on my other side and do exactly the same thing to make an X marks a spot, which looks like it's right between what's going on with my angle. And to test it out, let's go right smack down the middle, connect the dots. And we have now drawn a line that goes right through the middle of the angles. And again, if you don't believe me, one of the ways you can try, again, measure it with your protractor if you have one. But this is one, if you have a thin enough piece of paper, you could actually try folding this in half and see if, when you fold it to get this side perfectly matched on this side, which I could do. I have dark enough lines, so try to get those matched up. So when I unfold it, I should be right at that crease, and hey, my line went right through my crease. So I know I cut this in half perfectly. Let's do this one more time. And again, just like above, I'm going to do an obtuse angle. So I need a starting place. I need one side, obtuse angle, so I'm going to go bigger than 90 degrees. There's my second side. And I'm going to follow exactly the same steps. So here we go. Center your compass at your point, and then you're going to draw an arc that hits both sides. I'm going to actually go a little bit closer because I know this is going to take up a decent amount of room here. So I'm going to go a little bit closer just so I can see things a little better. Double check my point, draw my arc so it hits both sides of my angle. Okay, so again, from here, this is where you might need to tweak it a little bit for obtuse angles. So to draw this X in the middle, again, center, and I want to make sure that I'm actually in the middle of this angle, and I'm not quite sure if I'm far enough. So I'm going to go ahead and extend this just a little bit. So in the middle, I'm going to predict it goes about here. So I'm going to draw my angle there. And again, from this point, again, be very careful. Do not change the width of your compass. Recenter your center point down at the bottom. X marks the spot. So then connect your angle vertex through your X marks the spot. We should be right smack in the middle. So again, to double check, I've got thin enough paper, I'm going to fold it again. So I'm going to fold it so this side overlaps with this guy. And takes a little bit of finagling, but I kind of like hold my thumbnail down and that helps me get that creased in the right spot. Match it up. I know you can't see that too well on the camera, but if you're using thin enough paper, that should work for you. And again, my folding's not perfect, but I got pretty darn close. Okay, so feel free to watch this as many times as you want. If I went through this too quick, again, don't forget this is hosted on YouTube, so you could actually slow me down if you want. I've posted a copy of a couple practices, so same thing just like I did. I did a couple different segments, an acute and obtuse angle for each one of the angle constructions. So please check that out. And two, if you want to see another way to do this, check out the videos that I'm linking to, and those will use more of an old school compass that looks like this guy. Let me know if you have any questions.